All right, so my name is Claire Louge. I am the Executive Director of Prevent Child Abuse Arizona. We are a statewide nonprofit that is dedicated to strengthening families and protecting children. And the way that I like to say it is actually we're dedicated to protecting children by strengthening families, because we know that when families are strong and supported, children do better. All of our children do better. So this month actually marks my 10 years with Prevent Child Abuse Arizona. Time flies. And what I've noticed is that there has been a really positive evolution in our collective understanding of child abuse and neglect, but there is still a long way to go. So about 10 years ago, when I gave presentations to audiences, I would ask them a question, and it was this: how do you prevent child abuse and neglect? And a lot of the times, the answers that I would get were something like this: well, you look for the signs of child abuse and neglect, and then you call the CPS system to report it. Because the understanding back then, just 10 years ago, was that the way that you prevent abuse and neglect is you call and you report it. And even though it's important to report abuse and neglect if it is happening, that's not prevention, right? That's really intervention. And we really don't want to just manage the problem of child abuse and neglect. We want to get ahead of it. We want to prevent it before it happens. So a few years later, I would ask audiences the same question: hey, how do you prevent abuse and neglect? And I started to get a different answer. And that was something like this: well, you educate. Okay, well, you educate who? Oh, you educate parents, because if parents knew better, they would do better, right? And even though that's a better answer, parenting education and making sure that parents are supported with tips and tools to raise their children, that is a good strategy. But that is one of the many strategies that we need to implement in order to support families. You know, yes, when parents know better, they can do better. But if a family is getting evicted, they don't need a parenting class. They need a home, right? So now there is this more evolved understanding. When I ask audiences, I typically get more evolved answers. And they focus more on what Jennifer said at the beginning, which is that it's about the conditions. It's about the conditions that families are in. So when we shift conditions, when we shift the overload and the overwhelm that families are facing, child abuse and neglect simply become less likely. And that is what we need to do. So in my 10 minutes, I'm going to talk about what Arizona is doing, particularly around perception and mindset shift. Because the way that we perceive parents and the way that we perceive CPS systems or child protection systems, and the way that we perceive abuse and neglect really matters in terms of our decision-making as a society. And when we shift the understanding, when we have a different lens, a strength-based lens on families, and this lens of support rather than surveillance, that's when we can truly prevent child abuse and neglect from happening and become the community that families need.